Thanks very much. Now, please bear with us. This is our first externally facing webinar conducted by the school. We've done a lot of lectures online since we moved to lockdown, but this is actually our first webinar. So hopefully it will all go smoothly. So now, can I turn to my colleague, Kate? Kate, could you possibly start the video now? And this is going to last about 25 minutes. So I hope everyone enjoys this. If you've got questions during the video, please ask. Well, welcome to this webinar. I hoped to host a Dean's reception to mark my first year in UCC, but doing the webinar is the next best thing in the current circumstances. It's certainly been a very challenging first year. I'm really delighted today to be joined by Rebecca O'Shaughnessy, the new auditor of UCC's Law Society. Rebecca, first of all, congratulations on your appointment as a new auditor. I understand you went through virtual hustings and a virtual election. Maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. So, as you said, we had a virtual hustings. That's kind of the main thing required to get us to the next session of the Law Society. So we had two hustings. We had the auditor hustings first. There are two candidates, myself obviously, and another fantastic candidate, Deandra Nizukla, and it was a very close race. So I'm delighted to have come out on top. And then we had the hustings for the rest of the positions. So I think we have 10 or 11 other positions, and then obviously the class rep positions are filled next year. Yeah. So generally the two virtual hustings ran quite well. There were technical difficulties as to be expected, because this was kind of at the stage where Zoom was very new to a lot of people. So it took a while to get used to, especially Zoom on like a bigger scale. So I think we had maybe 40 or 50 participants in the second hustings. So that was like a lot of people to monitor. But generally they work quite well. It's definitely difficult when you're kind of making your speech for a position to kind of gauge the audience. It's not the same as standing up in a lecture hall and kind of like when you tell a joke, no one's going to laugh, and that's quite unsettling. No, I think it ran quite well, and the previous auditor, Jason Herbert, did a fantastic job. So besides one or two technical difficulties, it was great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's interesting, because I mean, we're going through very similar experiences, I guess, getting used to all kinds of online meetings, and you're right, it's much harder to gauge reaction to what you're saying, and you also have to keep an eye on the chat function, because you may find in the chat function you're getting some reaction to what you're saying. So it is a really new way of working, but I'm really pleased you managed to go ahead with it in that way, and also actually that so many students participated, which is fantastic. Just in terms of the school, I mean, we're trying to operate as normally as possible in the current circumstances, and I guess one of the really positive things is that a number of colleagues are actually involved in the response to COVID-19. So the school's trying to make a very positive contribution to society. So, for example, Dr. Louise Crowley, she's developed this family law hub. I don't know whether you've seen that. That's been put on our website. It's a kind of resource for families in these difficult circumstances. Professor Mary Donnelly has been appointed to the National Research Ethics Committee on COVID-19, which is fantastic. And Professor Irene Lynch-Fannin, she is chairing the Insolvency Committee of the Company Law Review Group of the Department of Business and Enterprise. And they are involved in in contributing to the emergency legislation that's being passed. So I'm really pleased that colleagues are making this kind of positive contribution. But I guess it would be good to talk about kind of the online teaching and learning and your experience studying and so on. So I guess when we closed down in March, it was the 12th of March. It was very short notice, and it was a Thursday, and I think the following Monday we had lectures and tutorials back up and running through our Canvas and Panopto system. So, I mean, one thing that struck me, and I think I want to acknowledge this, is the resilience and adaptability that both students and colleagues have shown through this crisis. I think it's been remarkably positive, and people have really come together and tried to work in a cooperative way to find solutions to all of this. But I mean, talking about the online teaching and learning, I mean, what was your experience of that? And maybe we can come on to studying and library, and then exams as well.
I think generally it was handled very well by both the law school and the university as a whole. I think we were lucky, which is probably not the right word to use here, but in the sense that this happened towards the end of the semester, so we really like only had, I think it was 2, maybe 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah, that's right, yeah.
With the third week really being kind of review lectures and stuff, so there wasn't that much content to get through at home, which was good because you could spread it out. I'm quite fortunate as well that I live in, you know, a quiet enough house, and my parents are working from home, but they're downstairs at the kitchen table and I'm upstairs, so it's okay. But I think the provision of the lectures not at set times, like that you could go on and do them whenever you wanted, was really useful to the people who might have a louder household at certain points of the day.
Absolutely.
But no, it was tough, and I very rarely use Panopto anyway. I kind of just try and go into lectures. I'm too lazy to go home and come back. I live kind of far away from college, so it was a change, but it was I think it worked as well as it could have done for myself anyway, and some of my friends.
Okay, I mean it's positive to hear that, but I mean I guess there would have been a lot of students, and you probably know some of them through your role, who've really struggled with connectivity issues. And also, you're saying you're living in a quiet house. Not everyone's going to be in a quiet house. I guess some people would be in very noisy environments. What kind of feedback have you had about that?
Well, certainly on the connectivity issue, I had a lot of my friends, and through my role as class rep last year, people kind of wanted to discuss their options in terms of mitigation for repeats, or if they even have to sit the exams in this period at all. I think sometimes in Ireland, kind of with the new initiatives on the island in particular, we're kind of fooled into thinking that we have like really, really good Wi-Fi everywhere. And then when we hear someone say, oh no, I don't, it's a bit like, oh no, you must do, like it must just be your house. But there's definitely large portions of Ireland, and particularly like rural West Cork. I can think of 2 people who spoke to me, like it's really tough for them. People always, if they want to, they can find a way around it, but it was good that if they couldn't find a way around it, they can repeat in August without being capped at 40%, because that would just be extremely unfair to cap them. So
no, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think the university's response to this, and in terms of allowing people to defer and do the resit without any kind of without any cap in August, is the right thing to do. I mean, I suppose my concern now is we're actually going to be in the same position in August as we were earlier. That in fact, you know, these exams are probably will need to be done online as well. And we need to think through how can we help the students who have connectivity issues.
I think you mentioned something earlier there about how everyone kind of came together when this started to kind of unravel. And I think sometimes in university there is a little bit of kind of background talk of, oh, you know, how am I going to get ahead here? How am I going to like not cheat the system, but how am I going to like take full advantage of this? But I heard nothing of that. It's very much kind of, okay, how are we going to help primarily the people in, you know, the most usual situation, and then how do we have the people with the connectivity issues, etc. So I mean, obviously we all kind of discussed how to do the exams to the best of our abilities, but apart from that, there isn't really this sense of oh well, I mean, that's your problem, like off you go. It's very there's an interdependent sense, and it's really useful in this time, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I also got the impression from engaging with students a lot during the run up to the exam period that, I mean, nobody's trying to play the system. I mean, people were genuinely trying to get answers from us and clarity and so on. And we were trying our best as well to produce clear guidance on what, or designed to help you to do the exam. So, I mean, I hope that certainly came across from the school.
Definitely, yeah, 100%.
Okay. And what about the library? I mean, we obviously had a lot of queries early on about access to the library, and I mean, the library itself worked tirelessly with publishers to try and get more and more access to ebooks, and they were pretty successful in that. We got a lot of free access to ebooks. I mean, it's obviously going to be a challenge to maintain that access. I doubt going into the future that will be free for the university. But I mean, did you find that helped your study?
Yeah, definitely. Like if any of my lecturers who watch this, they'd be not too happy to hear this, but I don't use textbooks a huge amount. I'm kind of more of an article
You
person.
read journal articles.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Good.
And I always was like that. Like even at the moment, I was kind of trying to find something to read, and I picked up like a collection of articles, in a book form as opposed to like long novels. But that's just my personal preference. But certainly, I have friends who, when they study, say if there's 5 topics in a module, like each topic is studied through like going through the topic, the 2 chapters or whatever in a book with the fine tooth comb. So it's really like not even useful but essential for some students. So the fact that that was provided was really important. Now it was delayed, but that is to be expected, and we can't expect the companies who provide the online resources to just go, oh yeah, like free straight away, because I mean it is a business, but it worked
well,
out.
that's right. I mean, that's going to be the new normal, I think. You know, they've given us free trials of a lot of these, but I think going forward, if the crisis continues, it's likely we will be charged, and that's obviously going to be a challenge. Now, what about the exams themselves? I mean, obviously this was something that students were understandably really nervous about, doing online exams for the first time. And I guess what we were trying to do was to ensure that the exams were as close as possible to what you would have been doing in an exam hall in terms of the format, at least. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with that? I mean, and how could we improve it if we have to go through this again, which seems likely in August and maybe even in January?
I think the most positive thing, or the first box that was checked and that was really important, was a kind of reassurance that the exam papers and the exam content was going to be the same as all the previous exams. Because in this situation, there are so many more variables that we could never have imagined to have to deal with, be it connectivity or a noisy household, or even just like your typing speed at home.
Sure.
So the fact that there were so many things that we couldn't control, to know that we were in control, or that there was the constant of the exam papers, was, I found in particular really, really good, or it's probably a better word for that, but really settling. When I was thinking about the exams and anticipating them, they were definitely difficult, like to sit down and kind of go, okay, I'm in an exam hall. I'm not in my bedroom with my bed next to me or whatever. So I'm not going to lie and say that they were a breeze just because they're open book.
Sure.
They were difficult, and in particular, like I had an accounting exam, so I had to write things out and use Microsoft Lens.
Right.
And there's a whole process. But like most people got through them, thankfully, and if they didn't get through them, they can repeat without being capped if that's something they want to explore. So maybe I'll be repeating. I really hope I won't be, but
I'm sure you won't be. I really hope you've done well. But I mean, one of the things that also I think was really important is that if we had changed the exams and given you lots more time, or even, I don't know, 24 hours to do a paper, one of our concerns was that employers might say, well, actually, the people doing this, they had an easier time because they had much longer. So this is also a way in which you can have confidence that your performance in the exam was probably very close to what it would have been, and the employers can also have confidence that the exams were very similar. So that was quite an important consideration in our thinking as well. Maybe we should also talk about the future. one of the things that worries me about the coming year is actually, I mean, you know, we can provide online lectures and so on. We can maybe come on to that. But that's only part of the student experience. I mean, lots of the student experience is being involved in sports, being involved in other clubs, socializing, and so on. I mean, so I'm interested in how the Law Society is thinking about engaging with students in this kind of virtual environment, and whether there are any ways in which we can provide some kind of substitute for that student experience, which is going to be lacking. You know, the face-to-face element is going to be largely lacking, I think.
I think certainly it's a massive concern. Kind of no matter how you look at college, you can't ignore the fact that there is a huge social aspect.
Yeah.
And that aspect isn't only inevitable, but it's extremely important for the development.
Absolutely, agreed. Yeah.
Like I myself, I obviously am involved in the Law Society, but I also play hockey with college, and I'm on the sailing team. I did debating for a little bit, but wasn't very good, so I stepped away from that.
I'm surprised.
I was too quiet, unfortunately, which is unusual. But it is extremely important that when you enter college, whether this year it would be physically or kind of virtually, that you are both aware of the options socially and with clubs and socks, etc., and that you have access to them. So I think the society, where we kind of are still kind of getting to know each other, the new committee are kind of trying to figure out how to take the handover from the previous committee. But one of our first tasks will be to kind of break down the issues and how we can help solve them as the society. So if that just means, you know, big Zooms with your class, or
sure,
kind of trying to up the social events when like the physical social events, when that is allowed by government restrictions, then we'll do whatever it takes. And we're definitely going to focus on the first years, because I mean, I have a sister who's just, well, she hasn't done the Leaving Cert, but she's in the process of being predictably graded. So the thought of her going in and like not knowing anyone in her class, or even though we're from Cork, but it's like not just kind of a bummer, like it's quite sad to think of. So certainly we're going to work really hard to try and bridge the gap between normal college and the new normal college, which I hate that phrase, new normal, but whatever.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's great to hear that. And I mean, if there's anything we can do, I mean, this may be a topic that we can go on engaging about, you know, trying to provide opportunities where students can actually meet each other in events, I think is absolutely vital. I mean, in terms of the school itself, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what's going to be happening. And I mean, not just for the school, for the whole university. I mean, the kind of what we're doing at the moment is some degree of planning for the coming year, but UCC itself, I think, needs to take decisions about whether everything is going to be online in semester one, or maybe even more radically that the whole year will be online. I mean, we now know that Cambridge, for example, in the UK, has decided that there'll only be online lectures throughout the coming year. So, I mean, one of the things I'm hoping for, which will help both you and colleagues, is more clarity. And once we've got that greater degree of clarity, then we can try to maximize the online experience if it is going to be online. But you're right. We also need to think about the kind of impact on first year students. I mean, it's not so bad for students who've had a campus experience and are now shifting to online. You at least have had that social engagement, but there's a real need, I think, to have kind of special provision for first years so that we do induct them into the campus and so on. I don't know whether to, but maybe we would ask you this about, I mean, what's your preference? Do you think we should say, you know, everything should be online for the coming year, just on the basis that, you know, if we do say, let's provide some face-to-face stuff, in the end, we might not be able to deliver it if there's a kind of spike in the virus and there's a further lockdown. What do you think?
I think, like, even as you said there, the possibility or the probability of a second wave is kind of on everyone's mind at the moment, even though restrictions are being eased.
Yeah.
So any planning may just have to be thrown to the wind if things change. That being said, I kind of would certainly at the moment put myself more on the optimist side of the scale than being kind of, I don't want to use the term negative because I also don't want to use the term realist, because to say that to close down the world for 2 or 3 years, as some people suggest, is realistic, I disagree with. But that's more kind of a general discussion.
Me too. Yeah.
So, but certainly, no matter what is planned or no matter what happens within 2 or 3 months, nothing is going to be set in stone, and that's extremely difficult for the university, for the law school, and all the different schools. And I think the students will appreciate if changes have to be made. Obviously, we want clarity. If I could know what was going to happen to me now next year, I'd be absolutely delighted to plan ahead. But we know that isn't possible. So, whatever can be given to us, will be great. And in terms of like a preference for online learning for the full year or semester, I mean, I want to be back on campus if it's at all possible, and I think everybody would be. But equally, the online learning is still really effective, and even if we could have some contact hours, if that is possible based on your living situation, then that would be great as well. I wouldn't like fully online learning, to be brutally honest, because to me that isn't college. But if we can't have normal college because of the situation, that's okay as well.
Sure. I mean, I guess from our side, I mean, the most important thing is to try to ensure that you have the best learning experience possible. And I mean, we're really committed to that. And if we are online, we need to make sure there's as much interactivity as possible. So it's not just a situation where we are speaking through recorded lectures and you're listening to that. There's got to be opportunities for interactivity. But yes, I mean, I agree. If there is a possibility of being back on campus and doing things face to face, we should adapt and go ahead with that. And maybe the kind of other part of the future is the longer term planning. I mean, just to fill you in briefly on that, we went through a quality review. You may have been part of that. I think you were maybe you were involved in a quality review on one of the student panels. I'm not sure, but we had a number of students involved in that. But we were evaluating our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and we were doing that obviously before the virus hit. And we had external reviewers were about to get their report. And the whole purpose of that is to help shape a new strategy for the school. And I mean, key things we're wanting to do are looking at the role of skills in the curriculum. Students and employers both told us that we need to do better with skills to try and raise the soft skill level of a lot of students, like in delivering presentations and so on. So one of the pieces we want to work on is how we better deliver skills and integrate them into the curriculum. Another key issue is internationalization, providing more opportunities for students to go abroad. Obviously, that's all up in the air at the moment. There's considerable uncertainty about that, but the opportunities will come back, and also possibility of attracting more international students to UCC. It would be great to diversify the student body and also diversify our staffing mix as well. So internationalization is a key theme. So we are hoping. We're developing a positive strategy for the future. Obviously, it's been affected by the virus, but we're still going to go ahead, with reviewing the curriculum, looking at the place of skills and so on. So, if you have anything you'd like to ask about that, I'll certainly try and answer it just now.
Well, I suppose something that really stuck out to me there was the skills development. Because something that is kind of said to us over and over again in terms of employers coming in or potential employers is that if you have 20 potential candidates in front of you and they all have 1-1s or they all have the same academic skills, how do you differentiate? Like if they all have all the basic skills, how do you then pick 5 out of the 20 or whatever? And the phrase that's repeatedly said is, we pick the people we want to work with. And I think sometimes that's, well, my understanding of that isn't just, oh, the friendly person or the person you can kind of say hello to in the morning. It's also the person that you don't have to teach the skills that you really thought they should have had already.
Sure.
Because that's quite laborious, like in terms of bringing somebody into the working environment. So I think skills are really important. I like, in terms of question, do you think the law school are doing enough, or do you think the law school is putting a lot of focus on technological skills as well? Because obviously the legal field is moving more and more online.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean, just around the skills piece first, I mean, I think we need to develop skills progressively through the curriculum. So for example, even focusing on writing, you maybe start off with academic writing in first year, but you move to professional writing. So you're able to write letters to clients and so on. So I'd like to see something like that around skills. You're right about technology. One of the things we really need to start focusing on, I think, also is AI. The impact of AI on the legal profession. And I think we need to build that into the curriculum, but we need to make sure that our students are capable of dealing with all the kinds of technologies that they're going to be facing in the office. So I think you're right, that's a part of it. I mean, the easier parts of that are using research databases and so on, but we've got to build further on that. And I really hope that we can enhance skills through offering more placements. So you're on the BCL Law and Business, so you've got the opportunity certainly for a placement, although I don't know, maybe at the stage you haven't reached that stage yet.
Not quite yet, no, it's in the near future.
So that's a good part of that program. We've got the BCL clinical, but that program actually could be expanded, I think, quite considerably. So there are more students actually getting the benefit of being integrated in a workplace while they're students. So again, when they leave UCC, they've both got academic skills, they've got the skills that we've helped develop, and they've got professional skills from their time working in a law office. So I think, if we can do these things, we will be able to produce better graduates who are more, who have better chances in the marketplace of getting really good jobs. And I mean, that's what we're wanting, that our students have the best possible future that we can help them to achieve. Okay, we probably need to wind up now. So I'd really like to thank you for talking to me about these issues, Rebecca. It's been a pleasure. I really hope you've done well in your exams. And I hope all our other students have as well too. I really hope people stay safe and well. And, whatever happens in the next few months, the school is really committed to supporting you and to trying to ensure that you have the best legal education possible. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks again, Rebecca, for our interesting conversation earlier. We haven't been flooded with questions during the video, but one thing I maybe should add to people who are on the webinar, I mean, since we recorded that conversation, there's been a little bit of progress in terms of what the shape of next year is going to be like. We still don't have complete certainty about it, but it is likely all lectures will be online, but at least large group lectures. But for first comers, so first year students and postgraduates, the postgraduate LLM students, they'll be prioritized in terms of face-to-face. But there will be an attempt to provide some degree of face-to-face for everyone. This may just be like a day a week or something like that, or even a half day a week, which isn't ideal. But what the university is still working around is the kind of protocols for cleaning classrooms for students moving through the campus and things like that, because we will need to have probably one-way traffic through the campus, but there will be an attempt to provide everyone with an opportunity for face-to-face. But again, I completely understand, if you live in Sligo or Galway, why would you actually come for that? So everything will be provided online, but there will be face-to-face opportunities for those who can't necessarily, sorry, there will be face-to-face opportunities for those who can attend. Okay, we're beginning to get some questions in. Let's see. So there's a question for you there, Rebecca, from Emer about keeping up morale during the exam season.
Yeah, I just saw that there. That's a really good question. Like the short answer is with great difficulty. Because it was really, like, if you were being examined for the full 2-week period, it was essentially like 5-6 weeks of really limited social contact, really increased study hours, and at the same time you're kind of going, oh, there's a lot of people very sick and losing their lives around me. So it was quite difficult, but I know it's probably a bit of an obvious answer, but plenty of Zoom quizzes with like friends, and I know in particular, like, my class is quite small, so we'd have stuff with my class, and that would kind of serve two purposes. One is just to kind of say hello and how are you getting on, but also I think with law in particular, it's so important to discuss the things you're studying, because if you don't do that, you cannot form your opinions, and if you don't form your opinions, you're not going to make a very good lawyer. So definitely kind of online socialization, and like I tried to exercise as much as I could. I started running. I've stopped running since, but it was nice for the 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, just trying to keep in contact as much as you can and put everything in perspective as well, that if you're healthy and happy, you're doing pretty well.
Okay, thanks very much, Rebecca. I see there's a question about will online lectures last for a full academic year or just the first semester. Our plan at the moment is simply that they would last for the first semester and that we would be back to normal by the second semester. But obviously, we need to take account of government restrictions, whether there's a spike in the virus. But the plan is simply that larger group lectures will be online for the first semester, and we would be moving back to normality by the second semester. But it's a movable picture, and we can't absolutely guarantee that. I hope you can understand. More questions coming in about why are we prioritizing masters and first-year students instead of final year students. I mean, this is a really difficult issue. One of the reasons for doing this is because if you're in the final year of your course, you have had a campus experience. And the first-year students have had no campus experience, so it's an attempt to provide them with some degree of campus experience. Also, the master's students are only here for a year, and they're also paying quite substantial fees, many of them. So I think it's appropriate to try to prioritize them. But even with those groups, not all their teaching and learning activity is going to be face-to-face. It's only going to be a proportion, it may be about 30%, something like that. Really depends on issues like room capacity with social distancing, the cleaning regime, the mobility regime, which is all going to reduce the capacity of the campus to actually cope with classes. And what are we doing to include more tech into courses? Well, we're hoping to develop, this may not be for the coming year, but we are hoping to develop courses on AI and the law, the regulation of AI, the impact of AI on the legal profession. So these kind of subjects, where possible, will be integrated into existing classes. So for example, I'm an environmental lawyer. One of the very interesting applications of technology in environmental law is using drones, both for enforcement purposes, for monitoring and enforcement, but also for kind of monitoring air quality and so on. So there are a lot of ways I think we could build tech further into the existing courses, and maybe also develop new directions in that regard. So do we have any other questions? I know we have former US Ambassador to Ireland, Kevin O'Malley, is in the webinar. Kevin, I wondered if you would like to ask anything or comment. I can see some more. Sorry, Kevin.
I think I'm on. Well, we have a whole series of problems at the moment in the U.S. that we're dealing with, and they're taking up the time of lots of bright and talented lawyers, stretching us to the limits, I'm afraid. So I've enjoyed hearing the solutions to the problems that you're facing at the school, and I see so many students who appear to be interested and are working through the challenging times. And at the age of the students, of course, you don't know that, time is a long time, and that these things will work their way out eventually, but big challenges right now. So I'm delighted that you'd invite me to join in the meeting, and I'm kind of inspired to hear the solutions that UCC has taken. And I follow the events in Ireland on a daily basis, and it's nice to see maturity in government.
Yes, thanks for that comment. I mean, you will also be able to tell that I'm not from Ireland, and that comment is true for my state.
I can tell that, yes.
As well as your own. But I think we have to be as positive and optimistic and creative in these situations as possible, taking account of the scientific evidence from government. So thanks very much for that. I can see there are more questions coming through. There's a question about access to hard copies of books from September. I don't have a precise answer to that, but I know the library is working towards providing physical access as quickly as possible. So there is work ongoing to try to ensure that will happen. It may not, it's unlikely probably to happen for the August exams, unfortunately, but it probably will happen by the time of the start of the first semester at the end of September. I'm sorry to hear about some of the experiences of exams. I can imagine it can be very difficult. I'm hoping that people will become more used to this. And also the other dimension of it is that UCC is hoping that for the students who have real connectivity issues, actually there may be an opportunity for them doing exams on campus, socially distanced in August, which I think would be a fantastic step forward. We're still working through that, but I'm hopeful there will be a positive announcement about that. Rebecca, I don't know if you want to maybe comment on that as well.
As I said in the recording, I wouldn't be the biggest fan of textbooks, so I kind of couldn't relate to that too much, but certainly I think a big part of everything at the moment is when are we going to return to normality, and like textbooks and the access, and even just the whole like ritual of going in and getting your book and what will I do this week, or like I know a lot of my friends, like it's Monday, I'm going to go in and get my book for the week, whether it's required or whether it's leisure reading. So I think that's quite important to people to know when they can get back to the routine that they had, and maybe that won't be for a while, maybe that'll be a new routine, but certainly I know like the library are really good, so I'm sure they're working towards it. I think someone said in the chat as well there that they're constantly working towards getting back to some routine, whether it's the old one or a new one.
Okay, thanks. Could I just actually ask, I see Virginia Conrick from the library is on the webinar. Maybe, Virginia, do you want to comment just briefly on library access for people who are online, please?
Yes, I will. I mean, you've said it there really that it is being worked on at the moment, and there are scenarios, but it's very much dependent on the university scenarios at the same time. So the whole idea, I suppose, the whole area of health and safety and protection is being looked at. So it's very unlikely that the library will function at any time in the same way as it did previously in the immediate future, because all of the evidence out there is that books, the virus does live on books. So it's unlikely people will be able to walk into the library and pick a book off the shelf. This is because you can't, if they do pick it off the shelf, they won't be able to put it back on the shelf because it will have to be cleaned and sanitized or before it's put back. So the evidence that's coming back from other countries and the research is that it can live for up to about 3 days on a particular book. So books will have to, if they are allowed out, which they will at some point, or some of them anyway, then when they come back, they will have to be quarantined, and this may be for up to 3 days. So things like the high demand section cannot operate in the way that it operated previously. So that section has an awful lot of the books that are necessary to people, but it can't operate in that way because it's against all the regulation. So we're looking at all of that at the moment, but it's likely that any other books will be on something like a click and collect system, where you might be able to get a book. So that's all being worked out at the moment, and plans are being drawn up. So I can't really give dates or anything like that. But as Mark said there, it's, I suppose it's unlikely to have anything hugely different in August. But we would hope by the 28th of September that there might be something, obviously, in place. But we are endeavouring to get everything online because, of course, the virus doesn't live online. So it's much better to have them online. So we are trying.
No, that's right. I mean, that's a really helpful answer, Virginia. And I mean, I appreciate everything you and your colleagues have been doing for faculty and for students. And it really also kind of underscores what Rebecca and I were talking about in the recording, which is also about ensuring ongoing electronic access to these. There are a couple of other questions I wanted to answer in the chat. And I think, Anya, did you have a question as well to come?
Well, thank you, Dean, for calling me into the conversation. Can I just start by saying how delighted I am to see so many of my students and others engaging in this very important opportunity. Again, I'd like to say at the first instance that no student hopefully should feel alone. You can feel free to email me or any of the colleagues at any stage, even during an exam. Please reach out. It's totally confidential. That's why we're here. And we're aware, very aware of the struggles that everyone is going through, all kinds of struggles. So please don't feel alone. Please do reach out. Again, I'd like to compliment our colleague Virginia Conrick and her colleagues in the library. Students might not be aware the Trojan work that Virginia and others have done to get us the access to the online textbooks. And again, as somebody who teaches 2 compulsory modules, each of which taught in EU with over 200 students, an optional module with 80 students, 2 LLM modules. If it wasn't for Virginia and the online access, I'm not sure what we would have done, and work is continuing. Of course, we all want to get back to normal, but that is, as we've heard, going to take some time. So we need to adapt. And I think the resilience that students have shown, and I've just been delighted at how many students have reached out and have emailed me personally and just been upfront with what they need. And just to assure, and Rebecca, you in particular with your role, to assure students they can email me. I mean, I don't want to speak for colleagues, but I'd be almost certain that every other colleague feels the same. And we're here to support our students. Again, you know, we all want to get back on campus, but as the colleagues and the Dean and the library have said, it's not going to be the way we would hope in August or September, but you know, we're getting there slowly but surely. I spent most of this morning putting together lists for Virginia and the colleagues in the library about the books that we absolutely need to get online access to, especially for the compulsory modules and for the evening law class. If I could get you into the library tomorrow to get all those books, I would, but you know, we're operating under university guidance and under government guidance, and we're doing everything we can. to make it easier for you and for the students, and that's our priority. And just to finish by saying, I would hope, because many students have emailed me, and environmental law students in particular, saying genuinely that they have time on their hands for the summer, you know, their work plans, their travel plans haven't worked out. We happily have a project in the School of Law connected with environmental law, where we're hoping we might be able to put something together by way of an online offering or whatever it might be, but that's all still very much under consideration. But we are aware that students are hungry for new opportunities, and just with the support of the Dean, just to assure you all again, and as someone who's teaching compulsory modules and other subjects, we're on your side, and everything we can do to help you through this unprecedented situation and to congratulate you on your resilience, we will do it, and we're here for you.
Thanks very much. I mean, that's a very nice intervention indeed, Anya. I'm pleased with that. I mean,
I recognise all the names, Dean. You know, they're all students, so I'm thrilled. An evening law students, and Edna Kavanagh, our star student who's been getting awards and everything else.
Let me try and answer some of the other questions that have been posted on the chat. Again, there was another question about international students. Well, we're doing a number of things with international students. I mean, one is that UCC is actually trying to engage with DFA to ensure that visas are actually processed more quickly. And one of the reasons for pushing back the start date to the 28th of September was to make it at least conceivable that some international students may be able to come. The feedback we're getting from India and China in particular is that students really do want to come. They actually don't want online, but they recognize that there may be a delay. So we are going to ensure that absolutely everything is recorded. So that if students cannot come or there are delays in them coming, they can still access the materials. It is very important to have a system of support, not just for international students, but for all students. So the school is actually, we're working towards developing a sort of expansion of our personal tutor scheme, which actually may involve students having a kind of buddy scheme as well, so that each incoming student would have a personal tutor amongst the faculty, and they would have a nominated buddy. And this actually is something that I'd be interested to talk more to Rebecca about, because the Law Society may be a kind of key source in that. That's something we would like to kind of follow up with you. So Rebecca, I mean, would you like to comment on that? Do you think that's a helpful idea?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that the peer support program, which I don't know if many of you are aware of, I was involved in last year, is really useful, and it certainly plays a role in terms of getting used to college life. Generally, the way that it is structured is that 90% of the time, an incoming first-year student, their peer support, I think I was a buddy, it was called, was I a leader? Something, anyway. That
you would be a leader.
A leader, yeah. I led them to success in college, I hope. The people, your leader is doing your course. So 90% of the time, the person that you have, you can talk to about academic things within reason, because obviously we're not a tutoring service. But sometimes you don't have somebody who's in your course, so it's a bit more difficult to access the information you might want about the academic side of college. But certainly maybe an extension of that program into the law school would be really useful. Because as I said, like when you're studying law, especially if you're a first year student, you just have to talk about it all the time. That's the only way that you're going to really wrap your head around it. And you have to read the same case 10 times and maybe cry a little bit, and then kind of go, oh, that's fine, I kind of get it now. So, and that's all so much easier when you're with people that you can talk to and that you can discuss things with. So definitely an expansion of the peer support program, or even a collaboration, would definitely be really useful, I think.
I mean, that's really positive to hear. I think we definitely need to create these new structures in a sense to replace the absence of normal social interactivity. So if we can work together to try and create that, I'd be really delighted. So I mean, let's talk further about that. I noticed also there's a question from my colleague Emma Ryan as well about the challenges of online teaching, loss of spontaneity, unexpected upsides. I mean, one of the issues I guess we need to work through very quickly over the summer is whether we are going to do synchronous teaching, i.e. live teaching, or asynchronous, which is simply pre-recorded. If you're doing asynchronous teaching, then obviously there's no opportunity for spontaneity or interactivity. If you are doing synchronous teaching and you have a live student audience, you can obviously record it, but there's at least an opportunity for interactivity in that. And I think what we need to do, given the kind of restrictions on social interactivity again, is we need to recreate, or we need to create as many opportunities for interaction as possible. So I'm very much in favor of trying to have synchronous material. It can be recorded on an Opto system, and so it can be available for students asynchronously as well if they're not able to attend the live event. One of the interesting things that does seem to be happening, and I think students, I find there's an increased engagement from students to some extent. Discussions, I've noticed this in the student council, for example, the attendance was greater and the number of questions was a lot greater, certainly when online than when we were doing it face to face. But again, Rebecca, I don't know if you have any thoughts about kind of asynchronous or synchronous teaching. What's your preference there?
I think that certainly for the first few weeks, no matter what decision is taken, there's going to be a lot of people unhappy with it, because that's just kind of the nature of things at the moment. People get an idea in their head about how things are going to go, and if that isn't fulfilled, then there's a little bit of upset. But as that's the same with everything at the moment, when decisions are made and when plans are put in place, nothing's going to be instant. Despite the ability to be instant online, nothing really is instant. Human acceptance isn't instant, which is quite profound, and I don't really need to go down that route. But I think it'll be, certainly, as I said, just to repeat, like a month at least before whatever decision is taken is accepted. But it will be accepted because people have to move on with their with their degree as well, at lecturers and students. Yeah.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the webinar, and I guess we'd better wind up now. So I first of all wanted to thank you, Rebecca, very much for joining me today, and also for doing the recording. It's much appreciated, and I think we can follow up about a number of these issues, not least around the kind of peer support and buddy system. So I'll be in touch with you. So I'd also like to thank all attendees today. Thank you very much for coming along. Thanks for your questions. We've tried to answer them insofar as that's possible. I'm sorry there's still uncertainty around a range of issues, but we're trying to work through all these issues in a systematic way, and we will provide the best education possible in the circumstances in the coming semester. The school is also going to start a number of webinar events, and we'd be delighted if you would like to join us for further webinars in future. So we'll keep you posted about that. But otherwise, everyone, take care, stay safe and well, and it's been a pleasure hosting you online this afternoon. So goodbye from me just now. Thanks again to everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.